Okay, so tonight what I'm actually going to be doing is showing you my Friday evening ritual. Now, to some of you, you might actually uh, do this, and to some, you might actually find it very intriguing. So, it's actually quite an important thing that I use every single week as a trader, and it's a very, very important tip that I'm going to share with you now. And I think a huge amount of you are going to be able to use it for yourself. So specifically what this relates down to is something that I learned as effectively the first real piece of studying that I did when I first started trading. I mean, I think I was about 16 or 17 years old when I first started trading on a demo account. And it was about candlesticks. So to any of you who want to understand the simple introduction to candlesticks, what I can do for you is actually do a separate video. So let me know if you want me to do a breakdown of exactly what candlesticks are, the history of candlesticks, etc. I can do that. But it was specifically about the fact that by learning everything about candlesticks, how they form, where they form, what they can show happening next, was allowing me to try and predict how markets were moving in certain directions. Now, to a lot of you, you know, in my investment group, the investment group where I manage capital for clients, I actually focus a huge amount on trading the weekly and daily time frame. Now, to any of you who want to keep updated on every single trade that I'm making in my fund, I make it all public. So you can actually go onto my Twitter feed and you can have a look at every single trade idea. You can have a look at my trading track record. It's live and it's verified, so you can actually see how much I'm making for my investment group. But most importantly is you can have a look at every weekly update, because I'm obviously talking about how is this trade working, how is that trade working, because a lot of my students, I mean, I've got students in now 27 countries around the world. We've just added in Poland to that list of countries. I've got students that are taking the trades with me at the same time, so they want updates. And the most important update that I give to all of my students is talking about what's happening at the close. So the close, most importantly, is the close at the end of the week. So now we're sitting Friday, well, we're sitting Saturday morning now. It's about, it's 1:15 in the morning on Saturday now. I actually just finished some Skype sessions with students, so I was only able to film this now. But basically what I do is I sit down, I have a look at the platform on my live open trades, which I've got the 3 trades here, and I actually assess exactly where that candlestick has formed. Now, just going back to what I mentioned earlier, that is what I was talking about. The very first thing that I started using and studying when I started trading is what I use most now. So most importantly is Monday morning, I have to find out exactly where that candlestick is open. So as you know, on the weekly time frame, every single candlestick represents 1 week worth of data. And from time to time, these candlesticks open up in different parts of the chart. So sometimes they can open up much higher than the previous candlestick closed, showing a gap. Now that gap gives us a piece of information of extreme momentum. Let's say, for example, we've gotten to the bottom of a very long downtrend and we see a pivot point candle, something like a spinning top or a gravestone doji, and then we see the next candle is a bullish engulfing, which is a very big candle, followed by a gap candle. Now that can help show us that there's extreme momentum moving through every single candlestick. Now the problem is when you go onto hourly charts and 4-hourly charts, it's difficult to see this because there's so many different candlesticks. I mean, on one of my trades that I'm going to talk about, the US Dollar Cad, this trade actually showed a huge amount of volatility today. So if I was watching it in the 4-hourly chart, I would have really struggled to follow, what are these candlesticks saying? But when it's on the weekly time frame, I can actually capitalize on time playing out before my eyes without any volatility. So when I see where the candlesticks opened at the beginning of the week, that obviously helps show me direction. And that's based on all of the understanding that I have of candlesticks, of which candlesticks are incredibly diverse, and I think they're incredible tools that you can use to really improve your trading. But more specifically is what happens at the end of the week, because obviously these trades now are open. So I've got a trade open on the US dollar CAD. I've got a trade open on gold, so the ZAR US dollar, and I've got a trade open on the US dollar ZAR. Now the US dollar ZAR is an interesting trade for me because that's the US dollar against the South African rand. I live in South Africa, so this trade not only is technically a big part for me, which I'm going to show you because of the candlesticks, but fundamentally, I know a huge amount about the South African fundamental landscape, the macroeconomics, the politics. So I'm incredibly involved in South Africa. So that trade is also giving me a lot of input because of my cultured experience, because I'm from the country. So most importantly, what I'm going to show you is exactly where these candlesticks have closed and why it would give me a much better understanding about exactly where I think these trades are going to be moving. Now, just to explain to you up front, I talked to you about the thing on Twitter where I'm posting out all of my live trades, all of my trade history, as well as all of my trading ideas. So what happens is, effectively, I try to do this as best as I possibly can. Sometimes I can miss it, but when I come up with a trading idea, myself and sometimes someone in my team or two people in my team will have a look at this trade idea and we'll confirm if we want to go for the idea. If we do, we immediately post that information up online. Sometimes we might think that it's not relevant to people online, it might be a bit too complex. But when it's a trade that's easily digestible, like these trades that I've taken now, these are the same trades that we put up online this week and the previous week. So if you look at the last 3 videos that I've uploaded, Technical Trading episode 1, 2, and 3, in those videos, I effectively explain the trades that I'm in right now before I even took them. And on my Twitter feed, you can go and have a look at that as well. I showed up all these trades before I took them. So what we're doing is we're actually having a look at the progress of these trades. So not only am I showing you a breakdown of exactly what I do as my last activity on the work week for trading, it is actually specifically looking at where the candlestick closed. So we're going to run through those, but more specifically, these are actually things that you can study. So if you want to, go back to the previous episodes, have a look at those as well, because it's going to be talking a lot about these trades, which are actually playing out really effectively for us right about now. What we're going to focus on is firstly the the gold trade. So this is ZAR US dollar. And as you can see, there are a few aspects that I've discussed. Now, like I said, I'm not going to talk about what has been running up to this because this video is going to be way too long. Unfortunately, what you're going to land up seeing is this video is going to run on and there's going to be lots of information that I'm going to share you. Like I said, if you want to see why I got into this trade, previous episodes, but I'm going to get back to this now. So more specifically, what I'm focusing on is seeing where that weekly candle closed. So if I zoom in here, this is effectively the candle that we're looking at. This red candle right on the right-hand side is what's happened this week. So the close of this week was the 22nd of June 2018. So more specifically, this candlestick is showing us exactly what happened. But if we go down to the weekly time frame, we're seeing, if we go down to the hourly time frame, we're seeing an entire plethora of data moving all the way back to the 11th of June. So the more specific date we want to focus on is the 18th of June. And now the 18th of June is specifically where we started to try and get into this trade. So if I show you here, we've got the 15th of June, which was the Friday of the previous week. So that was when the week started on the 11th, finished on the 15th, and then we had the 18th that started. So around about right over here, we had the open of the week. And as you can see on these period separators, we've got the 5 days listed. So each of the 5 days, you can see basically for the first 4 days, we just had a downtrend. We just had a solid downtrend all the way moving down. And as you can see, if we go out onto the bigger time frame, you can see that is matching very, very closely to this upward trend support area. Now, people would be able to judge that the support area has in fact been broken by price action. But as you see in the past, price action from time to time does break below these points, especially in times of extreme volatility. Right now this week, there was a lot of justified volatility. Bank of Canada came out with a much lower CPI number than we really expected. This was exactly today. That's probably why there's a stronger bounce back in gold just for today alone, out of the 5 days where there was a downtrend. But also running up with that, there's been a massive amount of volatility in obviously the US and China trade wars, but also a big part that impacted this was crude oil. Crude oil went through a very, very rough week of volatility. There was a lot of questions behind why the sort of global broadcasting opinion was that OPEC and other groups were going to begin rising production numbers, yet crude prices began to soar through the roof. Meanwhile, no one really expected something like that to happen. So they really sort of chimed it down to political tension around the world, economic tension, and gold being another commodity against oil, which is specifically an energy commodity. That was obviously something that caused a lot of volatility this week. So when this trend line was broken, we weren't too worried about that because we knew it was a tough week. And that made us persist to try and wait until the end of the week to see what we could find. So specifically, just going back, now as I've shown you what happened in the hourly chart, we had that strong downtrend all the way to the bottom, followed by an uptrend now. But now when I told you about the purpose of this video, it's what do we judge this candle to look like? Do we judge it to be a good candle for us, or do we judge it to be a bad candle? And now for myself, my personal opinion is this is a good candle for this trade so far. So now what this means is I'm able to close off the book on my gold trade for Friday evening. I'm able to say to myself, I've found something that makes me say, yes, this trade is going to play out next week. Now, sometimes it doesn't, but that's next week's problem. Because next week, if something goes wrong, we'll prepare for that then. Because we have made time and preparation to make sure if something goes wrong, we can still trade this. So next week, I'm still confident that we're going to have open to the upside, and specifically down to something that I'm going to show you now. So most importantly, if you go down to the hourly time frames, as I said, you had the last 5 days between these period separators showing the days. So this is Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, and Monday right back here. So Monday was a really flat day. Tuesday opened up slightly higher, but then had a strong push low. So it was the longest single day drop in gold in the last 5 days. 6 days prior, there was a massive, massive drop in gold. Very, very big drop. But as you can see, there's been a slow sort of tightening of price from the open to the close. So basically, as you can see, there was quite a big difference between the high and the low of this day, but the open and close was tightening very closely. And as you can see, it opened up slightly here again, but here it tightened very closely again. So specifically what you're seeing here is as price is falling on the hourly chart from the top down to the bottom, you'll see there's a trend sometimes where price might move low and then it moves high, and it shows some erratic volatility during the day, which is usually midday, where a lot of news is released in the US during the morning. So I'm saying midday in Europe. But the big one is that, as you can see, the open and the close are sort of landing on the same playing field. So as you could see, on the 5th day, it opened flat and closed flat. On the 4th day prior, so that was Tuesday, you can see there was some big volatility, but it didn't close too much lower. But then as you can see on the 3rd day, which is Wednesday, it opened slightly lower than the previous 2 candles. But then on Thursday and Friday, both candles opened almost very similar to each other. So what we're actually seeing there is prices beginning to stabilize as it's falling through that trend. And now this is the big one, is this is just a single weekly candle, but inside that specific candle, I could give you 20 minutes of explanation. And it's not because I'm trying to fill this video with talking. It's specifically because I know these strategies work. I've had countless weeks, easily over maybe a few hundred weeks, where I've sat down on a Friday evening and I've had a look at the status of my trades. Being able to do this allows me to sort of sign off on the book for Friday evening saying that yes, that trade is secure and I know what I'm doing on that trade. So specifically, moving on to the next trade is going to be the US Dollar Cad. So the US Dollar Cad was a big play for us this week, specifically because Friday, today, there were CPI numbers coming out. Now, CPI numbers help us identify what the inflation outlook looks like for a certain country. So for Canada specifically, when the CPI number came out, we anticipated possibly a very similar level of inflation compared to previously, but inflation actually dropped, and it dropped by quite a margin. So we were somewhat blindsided on Friday, but that's what we saw in the volatility. Exactly just 15 minutes after the release came out, we were already posting out on Twitter talking about this, just saying we understand that this has happened, but we don't feel that it's going to be damaging our trading plan. And that was specifically because we knew other people out there were in that trade. So for us, it was also important to see that, because what we noticed between the beginning of the day and the end of the day, like I said with the gold trade, is that price closed on a very similar level or even slightly lower. So as you can see on the chart here, if we do the same thing that we did on gold, if you go back on these previous days, so you got Friday now, then Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, and Monday right over here. You can see Monday, there wasn't too much difference between the open and close, but there was a lot of volatility between. Tuesday was a solid gain. Tuesday just made way all the way upwards. Really good tight candles inside a very tight price range, and I really liked seeing that. And as I saw that price began to actually land up gassing itself. And specifically, when I land up talking about a run, I call it a home run, where I see price moving exponentially in a certain direction, even though I know on the larger time frame, a pivot is going to occur very quickly or very soon. When I see that last gas on the daily and the hourly charts, it allows me to know that at some stage we're going to be getting a bit of a slope. And that's where a bearish cloud cover forms, and that the market begins to almost lose momentum and lose energy. And then the sellers step in. And that is exactly where we began to capitalize as much as we could by entering additional sell orders as the price continued to move higher. As now the price is beginning to fall, we know that next week there's a possible chance that this trend of the market gassing itself and the sellers stepping in is going to push the market lower. All we need happening next week is a solid week of losses in this valuation. So what that effectively means is that our sell positions in the US dollar CAD, meaning that we're going long on the Canadian dollar, is going to appreciate in value, and that's good for us. That's exactly why we're trying to make money here. So specifically, what I'm waiting for next week is to see, is this trend going to confirm? So although I'd sign off this trade, I'd still say to myself, pending confirmation. So next week, I know what I need to look for. I need to look for exactly where that candle opens up, and I also need to look for seeing what the trend looks like between the open and the close of that candle. I need to make sure they're below so I can work on that. But specifically, if we just close off one last example of this, is the weekly time frame. So the weekly time frame is also important, seeing that we had a very long wick all the way to the upside, but this candle just couldn't hold up that volatility. So you can see how there's downward momentum on that candlestick because it's forming a bit of a shooting star, but the price just couldn't hold that high level and had to come back down. So this could be possibly seen as a pivot point candlestick. So it is somewhat of an indicator showing us that price could retrace. Now, it doesn't always retrace. Sometimes the next candle might come out bigger and might push the price even higher. But it's an indication to us to say, yes, this is a possibility that this is actually going to be a pivot point in the candlestick. So most importantly is going to be the US dollar ZAR trade. So this trade is going to hopefully be something that I can definitely write home about. I specifically focused on using this US dollar ZAR trade to have a look at how I could identify currency that I understand very well, and I could see the overvaluation in it through and through. Now, the research I've done on the macroeconomics and the variables involved with the fundamentals and the quantitative calculations have shown me that this is a relatively strong trade. And I'm very confident about the fact that this trade is probably going to play out. Now, a lot of people, sometimes get a little bit worried about confidence. Well, what's your confidence inside this trade? And as I mentioned in the previous videos, I specifically talked about this trade. I've been talking about it on Twitter, and I've been releasing as much information as I can to you without, spoiling my top secret source. Because obviously running an investment group, I can't release all my top secret source. So most importantly with this trade is that I identified quite a lot of alarming aspects to it that showed me this was definitely going to be a pivot point for next week. So if you have a look in the chart here, obviously we've got this long downtrend on the weekly time frame. So like I said in the previous episode of Technical Tuesday, I think it was episode 3, I specifically focused on exactly why I chose this trade, which those aspects are still very valid, and I'm happy to know that my trading plan was not botched by any volatility. But this is specifically what we're going to discuss, is volatility. And it's specifically looking at the last 5 days and how much of a gain the last 5 days had. So really what you need to focus on is the last 5 periods here. So this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On the first day, which was on Monday, you can see that price opened in a very, very tight range and gained a huge amount of almost, I'd consider it a bit of a maximum velocity situation. And you can see that on Monday, it had a huge gain, followed by Tuesday, making a big gain, but giving up a large portion of that. And specifically, Tuesday was a big indicator to me. When the market pushes in that direction so fast on a Monday, sometimes that's expected. But when it pushes so fast on a Tuesday and already loses gas on a Tuesday, before a lot of the big juicy meaty news about the US dollar wasn't out yet, Tuesday was a moderate news day, Wednesday was quite big, and Thursday was even bigger. So I didn't expect that to happen. I thought the dollar would actually hold up against this pair and continue to weaken it. So as I saw the price move much, much higher on the day and then come right back down and close very close to that to that daily candle, I thought to myself, well, possibly this is the market gassing itself. Because specifically on the weekly time frame, I knew that the indicators, like I mentioned in the previous episode, were definitely overbought, and this currency pair was going to be an opportunity for short selling. Now, I've taken advantage of this, and this week I've been shorting all the way up that candlestick, and that has proved, very good for me to find pinpoint entry accuracy at the highest price I could possibly fetch for that week, and then watch the candlestick move all the way back down and form the spinning top with a very, very long tail end. So it's almost like an extreme shooting star. Now, if you knew about the candlestick formations, you'd understand what I mean by a shooting star. It's how we name a very specific pivot point candlestick. So this trade for me is definitely in the bag. I can sign this off and gold stamp it immediately, because I definitely know that next week coming, I'm either going to have a slightly bearish candle or I'm going to have one seriously bearish candle. Now, we don't always know. I can't say to you for sure that I'll be right, because sometimes I'm wrong. I don't have a 100% win rate. It's only 88%. So sometimes I am wrong. But this trade for sure, I think, is something I'm going to keep on my book this week. So not only in this video have you seen a really great insight into exactly what I was talking about with regards to how important a candlestick is to me, the open and the close of the candlestick, and how I analyze that last 5 days of development. Sometimes when I go into the week on a Monday, I'm already drawing on a graph. I actually take a screenshot of my MetaTrader and I put it in Photoshop. And then I actually sometimes draw projections. And I try and see if I can match those projections by the end of the week. Now, to me, it's just a bit of a practice to try and keep my edge on as much as I possibly can. But it's also something to help me try and create projections inside my mind of understanding where the flow of price moves. Because when it comes to currencies like this, there is a flow of price. Now, people sometimes really dig in when it comes to the comments and argue with me and talk about how you can't predict where price goes and price is this and price is that. It is not that. It's about being able to control my prediction for it. If I know that there's a 6 out of 10 probability, that means that it's more than majority. But if I know that it's a 9 out of 10 probability, I know that there's a great majority. So it's not that I'm trying to say I know where the price is going. I'm trying to say that I am sure of my probability that I know where the price is going. So that's more specifically what you need to use these videos for. Most importantly is education. As you know, for myself, I train students in now 27 countries around the world, it's amazing. I'm able to speak with people on a daily basis and help them and help spread videos just like this over YouTube, where thousands of people are able to watch them and learn something. But most importantly, I want you to actually engage with me. I want you to let me know what you thought of this video, what you thought of the opinion of, do you think sitting at midnight on a Friday evening when most people are out partying, watching candlesticks and making sure I get the job done and sign my book is best? And if you should be implementing it in your week as you study and you begin to trade and start climbing that ladder. Talking about climbing that ladder, like I said back right in the beginning of this video, it's all started with a candlestick. So I'll tell you what, I've got a candlestick PDF that I've drawn up specifically for my students. Now, I can't give it to you because my students, well, they pay me for that. But specifically for that PDF, I'll be able to do a video for you and I'll walk you through every single candlestick formation that we show our students in the MSE Trading Academy. If you want to, make sure to pop a comment down in the comments below and let me know, would you like to see a video like that? Also give it a thumbs up if you thought it was a good suggestion. But to any of you who are interested, if you are looking for some sort of education about trading and investing, please make sure to visit my website, www.msequitiestrading.com. What that's going to do for you is point you straight to my website. That's going to show you all about how we train students in 26 countries around the world. I built a very specialized online training platform and a system that allows me to deliver educational content to students all over. So they not only are able to access through their mobile phone, through a mobile app and study whenever they want and wherever they want, they're also able to log in online and study through an online portal. On top of that, we provide 12 months worth of coaching for their education. So for any of you who want to get hold of us, just email study@msequitiestrading.com and my coaching team will get straight back to you on your queries. But make sure to subscribe if you want to keep updated with all of these videos, and I will see you in the next one. I think for myself tonight, I've signed my book and I need some sleep. Cheers for now, everyone.